Welcome. You're listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast, the show that cuts through the fog of war and updates you about the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
Hello, I'm Marina Yevshan, your host of the Russia-Ukraine War Report podcast, and today is September the 6th, 2024. It has been 3,875 days since Russia started covert military operations in Crimea, 10 years and 198 days since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, 2 years and 195 days since Russia expanded its war of aggression, and 32 days since Ukraine counter-invaded Russia. Today's podcast covers the events that happened on Thursday. You will find the Russia-Ukraine war map helpful to visualize the areas discussed. There is a link in the podcast description. The Russia-Ukraine War Report is compiled by our team from around the world. Today's report includes information from our direct contacts and journalists in Ukraine, the Russian Ministry of Defense, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine morning reports, operational commands north, south and east of Ukraine, open source intelligence, our in-house team of analysts and geospatial experts, and pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian mail bloggers and social media channels with a track record of trying to be accurate. We have one mission, the truth, because the truth matters. Here is my daily assessment. 1. We maintain that the lack of a meaningful response by Ukraine's allies to open and unrestricted attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure by Russia has convinced Moscow this is an effective strategy. 2. Autocrat Vladimir Putin's order to recapture the Kursk region of Russia by October the 1st is unrealistic and unlikely. 3. Russia will maintain its attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, continuing Russian crimes against humanity that started in October 2022, as outlined in 4 arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court. 4. Continued attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure have caused critical damage, creating an environment where an accident at one or more of Ukraine's nuclear power plants is increasingly possible. 5. The unwillingness of the Biden administration to permit Ukraine to use provided weapons for strikes more than 40 kilometers from the 1991 state border with Russia has forced Ukraine to develop its own deep strike capabilities, proving that escalation threats from Moscow are hollow. 6. The policy of escalation management implemented by the NATO alliance and the United States, and to a small extent Germany, is a complete failure that only encourages Russian acts of aggression, including more frequent and deeper violations of NATO alliance airspace and acts of espionage in Europe and North America. 7. We maintain Russia has no strategic reserve available to mount an effective defense of the Kursk region, continues to suffer unsustainable losses, and has committed almost all of its available conventional forces in Ukraine. 8. The Kursk counter-invasion is strategically sound. 9. We are now unsure if Russia will achieve the operational goal of capturing New York and Donetsk in 2024, but we maintain that for Ukrainian forces an extended battle in an urban environment is ill-advised. 10. The risk of an attack on Ukraine by the armed forces of Belarus is extremely low. 11. The Russian economy is much weaker than reported. 12. Persistent delays in the delivery of promised military hardware, munitions and funding continue to prevent the Ukrainian armed forces from reaching their full combat potential. 13. We maintain the world is caught in the mutually assured destruction instability paradox. Today, let's start with the action report summary. Yesterday, Russia carried out 181 discrete assaults, and through September the 5th, the 7-day moving average for daily attacks dropped to 190. There are no indications that the decline in Russian assaults is due to an operational pause or change in tactics. In the Kursk region, Ukraine controls 1,292.5 square kilometers, with another 322.5 in the grey zone, for a total area of 1,615 square kilometers. The bridge is 95 kilometers wide, and the depth remains at 36 kilometers. Ukraine controls 94 hamlets, villages, settlements, and tactically significant areas, such as the Gazprom gas compressor and metering station at Sudzha. Of those, 33 settlements are under full administrative control. The Glushkovsky salient, where 2,500 to 3,000 Russian troops are isolated, is 560 square kilometers. This is unchanged from yesterday. Let's go into the details of what happened on the battlefield. This would be a good time to open up the war map on a second device and find the city of Sumy, that's in the northeastern Ukraine. There is a link to the map in the podcast description. Ready? Here we go. We begin in the Kursk region of Russia, in the Glushkovsky area of operation, or AO. The Russian pontoon bridge over the same river north of Glushkova was destroyed, and a new one appeared about 200 meters away. Russian soldiers in Kharkiv violated operational security, again, revealing the bridge over the same river was still capable of supporting small vehicles after makeshift repairs were done. In Nova Ivanovka, a Russian vehicle was hit by a first-person view one-way drone. Rampant looting continued, with a store owner from Glushkova posting pictures of their market called Traffic Light, which had been gutted. Quote, "I understand taking what they need, but just take. It's not enough to take it out on pallets, you also had to break everything? It's painful to watch this." In the Korenevo AO, Russian mercenary mail blogger Rybar reported fighting in the area of Korenevo, and the Russian Ministry of Defense, or Armored, claimed there was fighting near Olgovka and Matveyevka. A Russian UAZ-452 Lov carrying ammunition was destroyed on the eastern edge of Zhuravli, with the Ukrainian 225th Brigade reporting that the failed resupply mission enabled them to capture the Russian positions. In the Lvov Operational Direction, or OD, Rybar became the first large Russian mail blogger to admit that Maryevka and Naidionov, and all of the villages to Malaya Loknya, are under Ukrainian control. Russian videos showed Ukrainian positions on the western edge of Naidionov attacked by Grad rockets and artillery strikes east of the village, confirming the advance. We maintain that it is very likely that Ukrainian forces advancing west from Nechaev and east from Naidionov have connected. Multiple Russian sources, including Armored, reported ongoing fighting on the western edges of Kamyshovka and Kamyshevka. At the time of recording, there were reports that Ukrainian forces liberated Atradne, Novoselovka and Hitrovka, but our analyst team was not able to verify the claims. There were no reports of significant activity in the Bolshoye Soldatskaya AO. However, there was significant geospatial evidence that fighting was ongoing in Berdin and the western edge of Novosotnitsky, with artillery scars suggesting Ukrainian forces advanced from the south. Armored reported fighting in the area of Cherkasskaya Porechная, but if you look at the map, the next village to the northeast is Berdin. Now, let's talk about my home, Ukraine. Let's start in the Kharkiv Oblast, in the Liptsev-Vovchansk AO, where the only significant fighting was in Vovchansk. The Russian troops that were attacked by a Dragon drone near Staritsa released a video showing the aftermath. Everything was burned, with the soil left barren among the blackened tree trunks. They reported that everything had been destroyed in the attack, and they had been left with nothing. Another group of Russian troops showed the aftermath of an attack on their position with similar results. Helmets, weapons, ammunition, communications equipment, tools, and their vehicles were destroyed. You can watch both videos and almost all of the videos I mentioned today by becoming a subscriber. For just $5 a month, you get access to our situation reports. There's more information in the podcast description. In the Kupiansk AO, fighting continued in the area of Sinkivka and the direction of Glushkivka and Lozova. A Russian tank attempted to advance along the tree line west of Peshchane, but suffered mobility kill damage, with the crew running away. Based on the new intelligence, the grey area was expanded. In the Luhansk Oblast, west of occupied Svatove, Russian forces continued their attempts to advance in the direction of Druzhelubivka and Novoyegorivka without success. West of Kremenna, Russian forces carried assaults on the eastern edge of Makiyivka and attacked in the direction of Nevske and Novosadove. There was no change in the situation. In an undisclosed location in the Serebryansky forest, a Russian logistics node for fuel and ammunition was attacked by a Dragon drone. Due to the ammunition and fuel cooking off, 4 T-80 BVM main battle tanks and somewhat rare MAZ 531605 fuel tanker were destroyed. In occupied Severodonetsk, residents lined up for the distribution of bread, soup, cucumbers and tomatoes. Less than 10% of the pre-war population remains in the city, where Russian occupiers have done almost no work to restore civilian infrastructure. Absent from the queue, military-age men. Now let's talk about the Donbass, where we start in the northeastern part of the Donetsk Oblast. Beginning in the Siversky Yo, Russian attacks west of occupied Zolotarivka, in western Spirne and southeast of Vyimka were repulsed. The situation deteriorated in the Kostantinivka Yo. We had already adjusted the map showing a small Russian presence west of the Siversky Donetsk-Donbass canal near Kalinivka, with several Ukrainian sources reporting that Russian troops consolidated the gains. Fighting continued in the canal district of Chasiv Yar and the forested area west of Ivanivska. Russian forces have captured the 218-meter heights west of Klishchiivka, and with it the complex of bunkers and trenches that were built by Ukraine in 2022 and improved by Russian forces in 2023. The loss of the heights eliminates Ukraine's ability to hold fire control over Andriivka and the approaches to the Siversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported fighting near Predtechene and Bila Gora. In the Toretsk-New York AO, Ukrainian forces made new advances and continued to stabilize their defensive lines. The 12th Special Operations Azov Brigade was transferred to the area of operation and led a counteroffensive that advanced into central New York. Ukrainian forces regained military control of the industrial district and the residential areas east of the Kryvyi Torets River. Russian forces remain blocked in western Druzhba, Pivnichne and Zalizne and in the apartment blocks near the hospital in eastern Toretsk. Additionally, Russian assaults in the direction of Nelipivka, Sukhabalka and Panteleimonovka were repulsed. In southwestern Donetsk Oblast, Russian forces carried out almost 50 attacks in the Pokrovsk Yo. Ukrainian forces continued to defend the north flank effectively, repulsing attacks in the direction of Zelene Pole, Vozdvizhenka, Myrolubivka, Krasny Yar, and deeper into Grodivka. The heaviest fighting was in northern Novogrodivka, where Ukrainian forces continued to hold their defensive lines in the area near the coal mine. Russian Melbloga II majors complained that as part of the evacuations from Pokrovsk and Myrnograd, heavy equipment, civil infrastructure and valuables were being removed, declaring that the goods, quote, belong to us. Ukrainian forces continue to hold their defenses in Marinivka and are harassing the Russian flank in Novogrodivka. The Ukrainian Karadakh Brigade, defending Mikhailivka, committed ground theft tank twice in 4 days. The first Russian tank was stolen when a sabotage and reconnaissance team ambushed the Russian crew on Centralna Street. The squad drove the tank back to Ukrainian positions. The second tank was recovered at the railroad bridge that crosses the same road. Multiple Russian armored vehicles clogged the junction after a platoon of Russian armor was ambushed by a T-64 medium-duty tank. The next day, possibly the same T-64 tank arrived at the bridge and recovered an abandoned Russian T-72 main battle tank. In the Kurachovo, Ukrainian forces still held Nevelske, with our team told that over the last 24 hours, Ukrainian defenders are feeling, quote, cautiously optimistic. Russian forces made additional gains on the southern edge of Halytsinivka while failing to consolidate early advances in the direction of Lysivka and Ukrainsk. Russian forces remain south of the Lozova River in the northwestern part of Krasnohorivka, and Ukrainian forces repulsed Russian assaults in western Georgievka and in Kostiantynivka. In the Vuhledar, a video from the Ukrainian 72nd Motor Infantry Brigade confirmed that Russian troops could not consolidate their gains in the Pivdenno-Donbaska coal mine No. 1 complex and suffered heavy losses during the attack and withdrawal. We moved the line of conflict back to the known Russian strong point, 1,200 meters to the east, but left the mine in the grey area. Russian troops continued their attempts to advance into Vodyane and in the direction of Vuhledar. The Russian flag was raised in western Prechystivka, confirming the settlement was captured. Today's podcast ends with the Theaterwide update. In an interview with United States news agency CNN, the Commander-in-Chief of Ukraine's armed forces, General Alexander Syrsky, admitted that some Ukrainian troops were being sent to the front line with inadequate training. Quote, "The dynamics at the front require us to put conscripted servicemen into service as soon as possible," adding that recruits get 4 weeks of basic training followed by 2 to 4 weeks of specialized training before going to the front. During the same interview, Syrsky said, quote, "Over the last 6 days, the enemy hasn't advanced a single meter in the Pokrovsk direction. In other words, our strategy is working." An analysis of our geolocation and map data confirmed that specifically in the direction of Pokrovsk, and only in the direction of Pokrovsk, we have not recorded any new Russian advances. While accurate, the statement minimizes the significant advances made by Russian troops in the direction of Selidove. The truth matters. Syrsky also confirmed our earlier assessment that Russian artillery strikes and combat potential were decreasing. US President Joe Biden has 25 days left to request and gain a congressional extension for $6.2 billion in unused Presidential Drawdown Authority funds that will expire on September 30th. On April 23rd, Congress authorized almost $61 billion in additional military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine, which has largely gone unused. Presidential Drawdown Authority enables Biden to transfer materials already in the Department of Defense inventory to Ukraine. It is unclear why, after fighting for 6 months to gain the funds, so much has gone unallocated. White House officials are hoping to tack the extension onto a continuing resolution, which Congress must pass before September 30th to prevent a government shutdown. Former President and Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is reportedly pressuring Speaker of the House Mike Johnson to allow a government shutdown to happen. Yes, I'm having déjà vu too. It's a common misconception that Presidential Drawdown Authority funds don't expire, but the 2024 bill that provided additional support to Ukraine has a set deadline. The last 2 military aid packages sent to Ukraine totaled just $250 million, and European officials reported that the US had not sent any large-caliber ammunition since June. After the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Rustem Umerov, traveled to Washington to meet with his counterpart Lloyd Austin, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby told reporters that Washington had not changed its position on allowing deep strikes on Russia. The Ramstein working group is meeting today, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky attending. US Secretary of Defense Austin announced that Ukraine would receive another $250 million aid package, and President Zelensky suggested that France would be announcing a new military aid package at the meeting. Finally, the United Kingdom announced it would provide Ukraine with 650 Motlet multipurpose missiles by the end of 2024. Some other events happened while the podcast script was being written, and that will be shared with our subscribers in a flash report. We never end the podcast discussing war crimes. So, as of the early morning in Seattle, where the script is prepared, that's what we know. Join me again on Monday, and we'll do it all over again. Your support of my home, Ukraine, helps us make history and protect the future for all.
You've been listening to the Malcontent News Russia-Ukraine War podcast. To help keep us independent, please consider providing financial support by becoming a patron. Want on-demand news in your hand? Download the Google News app and make Malcontent News one of your favorites to receive breaking news updates. Thank you for listening.